Hello and hi. Welcome to Little Dead Aliens, the show where we talk about horror and the X Files. And with me today, we have Gavin Mevius, who also does two podcasts for the Glitterjaw community. And welcome, Gavin. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Ben. I'm really excited to be on the show.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming. You do a show, Mixed Reviews, and you also do the Q Division about James Bond.
James Bond, yeah.
I'm not big into James Bond, but I love the Mixed Reviews. It's just a kind of a movie podcast, and I really love it. I listen to it quite often. So I'm excited to have you here to talk about horror movies. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your history with horror movies and also the X Files?
Absolutely. So I have been a big horror movie fan, and I know, I feel like I've gotten the reputation on the mixed reviews of being the like quote unquote spooky bitch, and that's because I just grew up with them. I never had a lot of restrictions on watching things as a kid, but for some reason horror was never uh like the modern horror was never a huge thing because I was also a big Turner Classic Movies kid, which is very nerdy, but also I'm partially colorblind, and so black and white movies always made more sense to me than a lot of people, I feel like. And so I grew up with a lot of the like universal, 1920s through 50s sort of horror movies and 60s getting into like Psycho and stuff. And it really wasn't until I met my friend Tim Gagne, which I'll give a shout out to. He loves when I give him a shout out on a podcast. I literally met him like a week into my junior high, going into junior high. And he was the person who like really introduced me to anything from like 80s slasher to giallo to, and so like I owe him so much for my education in terms of horror. And once he's got that car rolling, I could not. I mean, I remember going to I'm come from a very small town, and we did not have Blockbuster or anything. That was two towns over, but we had a Mr. Video, and I remember like renting the R-rated movies at like 13, like them letting me do it. And so immediately after Tim introduced me, I was like, I gotta see these Nightmare on Elm Street films. I gotta see these Friday the 13th films. And so like that's really my history with horror. So ever since then I've been a big fan, and I guess that continues all the way up through to this day. I'm in terms of my career, I'm a professional video editor, and I work mostly in television and commercials. But this past year or 2 years ago, I was delighted to edit a short horror film for my friend Austin King called One Night Cherub that's been playing festivals and is probably getting towards the end of its festival run at this point. But yeah, and so I guess horror has just been a huge part of my life, and very cool that my first professional, that's not true. I've worked on some documentaries, but my first professional short film that's fiction is also horror. So I owe both Tim and Austin a lot of credit for that. In terms of the X Files, I grew up with my father who was a crazy science fiction lover, and so anything that was sci-fi or that bent, was totally his bag. I remember him buying me like VHSs of Ray Bradbury Theater, and so when X Files came out, it was something we were like pumped for, and so this is the sad part that's gonna as I never watched past the first season. I loved it when it was on, and the lead-in show at the time was a little-known show, and most people will have no idea what I'm talking about. A little-known show called VR5, and I loved VR5 so much. And I thought X-Files was fun, but I think it was a little more adult than what I was, and VR5 was a little more heady and a little more like conspiratorial, and which sounds crazy knowing what happens later on in the X-Files. But I remember watching it, and then when VR5 was canceled, I was like, I don't know, I'm doing stuff on Friday nights, like, I stopped. And it's such a shame because I do really like the show. I think it's a really strong first season, but I've never gone back to watch it or finish it. I've seen the movies and I find them very confusing as somebody who never completed the show. Um, but yeah, so I'm happy to talk about an episode in the first season, and I'm hoping as your show goes on, it inspires me to rewatch and watch the whole thing because X Files to me is that first season. So I'm glad to be talking about a first season show, but first season episode. But yeah, that's And it's one of those things that's really confusing to me because I'm obsessive about knowing stuff. Like shortly after X Files came Buffy, and I'm a huge Buffy fan, and all of Buffy, like all of Angel, everything that came after. And I don't know why that never happened with me for X Files. But yeah, so it was cool to rewatch this because I had not seen this episode since it aired.
Wow, that's
Did you
awesome.
enjoy my one man show? Was that fun for you?
Great, yeah. No, I'm always really jealous of people who come on and have that sort of relationship with horror because, like, I had very strict parents who didn't let us watch anything. Like, I didn't see my first horror movie until I was, like, a freshman in high school.
Wow.
Uh, so, yeah. I also didn't watch X-Files a lot as it was on. I don't remember, like, sitting and watching it, so it'll I think X-Files comes to you when you need it. It'll click when it's supposed to, and you'll, like, obsessively watch it and it'll become your that's what happened with me. It just kind of became my personality for, like, a year and a half. Um,
Can I but
awesome.
before we move off then, can I ask, like, not to psychoanalyze you, but, you are the host of the show and everybody's getting to know you as this goes along as well. How does having strict parents like that affect you? Did that lead to any sort of rebellious behavior? Because my parents I mean, part of the reason my parents weren't strict is they couldn't be. My parents worked all the time. My mom worked nights, my dad worked second shift, and if so when I was home, they weren't, and I was at school, and that I'm not saying that that's great either, but I'm always curious about like parents' strictness and whatnot. And then on the reverse of that, I think I became kind of a goody two shoes because I didn't have that supervision and I needed to apply it to myself. Like I don't think I had my first real alcohol drink until I was 18, and I think that's pretty late for most people. And so I I'm always curious, did that lead to any sort of massive rebellion on your part when you started realizing how strict they were?
Um, not really. It's not a fun answer, but
That could be fun too, Ben.
well, I was thinking, like, when we were talking and how you didn't get into horror as when you were young, even though you could have, it's like sort of the forbidden fruit of it that makes it more appealing. So if
Yeah.
your parents are like, "I don't care," or not there to be like, "Hey, you shouldn't watch this," then you don't really care to watch it. But, for me, my parents were very strict because they were religious, and I was also very into the whole Jesus thing. So I was rebellious in a lot of ways, but not, like, to do bad things.
Yeah.
Um, I was very stubborn and, like, didn't wanna do things that I didn't wanna do. I'm an Aquarius, so I just wanna do what I wanna do. Like, I was sent to the principal's office once because I was writing a poem in a class, and my teacher was like, "You need to pay attention," and I was like, "This is not important. I do not need this." And had
Love
to
that
spend
story.
so that was me in high school. I was just kind of an asshole to authority figures, but not rebellious.
It's always Jesus getting in the way of us finding Michael Myers, I find.
Yeah, that's true. Um, so yeah, I was rebellious and not like I didn't do bad things though necessarily.
I mean, I find, not to steal a page, we just did a couple months ago, we just did a Wes Craven episode, and all I could think of, I often think of him talking about horror film fans and the horror film community, and he's like, a lot of them are the nicest people. He's like, people think that people who watch horror movies are like out secretly torturing animals and whatnot, and he's like, for the most part, every horror fan I've met is just like pretty well adjusted, and that this is the way they get that sort of, like, anxiety out of them. But also, like, I realize I'm like a rare breed because I always, when we do the mixed reviews, we always do a Halloween episode under duress from Louis, my co-host, and I every year, I'm like, "People love to be scared," and Louis like, "No, they don't." So, yeah, I understand that, like, there is different opinions on horror when it comes to it.
Yeah, some people do love to be scared and some people really hate it. So,
Louis got to experience a full horror movie. I took him to see It Part 1,
wow.
and his memories of that are that I was laughing the whole time because that's my nervous, like, when something really, is like, enjoy the experience of the and so he's like, "Yeah, you freak."
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the crazy kills that just make us laugh, I think. I
yeah.
don't know. It's just what
Yeah, I
we're
don't think we're broken. I just think we're looking for a different rush than other people, perhaps.
right. Yeah, let's go with that.
I don't wanna be broken, Ben. I'm
Okay,
perfectly normal.
you're totally normal, it's
Yeah,
me.
exactly. We all go a
Um,
little mad sometimes, that's all.
right. Okay, so I do like to ask sort of get to know you questions that are specific to the person I'm talking with. So, if you were gonna have Mulder or Scully on mixed reviews, what kind of genre or subgenre, director, subject would you wanna talk about with them?
It's so funny. So I did think because I you sent me this question earlier, and I did think this over, and part of me wants to cheat and use topics we've already done because we did this past year for Halloween, we did aliens on film, and obviously, like, Mulder all the way, like 100%. Um, and I think he would be a great guest for it, and I think he'd be a fucking weirdo the whole time, and he'd love every bit of it. But Scully, I think, is a bit harder because she's so exact in what she likes. I think it's in the first season she mentions Exorcist is one of her favorite movies. And so, like, maybe because I've always floated the idea of doing demons on film with Louis, and maybe she'd be a good guest for that. But also, I think there's something about her, and maybe it's just me confusing her with, you know, the lead actress herself, who is a bit of a secret freak. I almost think that, and this is not because you just recently told me you just listened to it, but, like, I was thinking about this before. I think Scully would be a great guest on, like, the John Waters episode and whatnot. I think that she secretly has some weird shit in her background that she's like, "Yeah, I like this. I like the fucking crassness of this and whatnot."
Yeah, I think so too. I think Scully has I think I've said this before on an episode where someone said something similar, or I was like, I think Scully would be into the weird. She would probably, like, deconstruct it and,
Right.
like, sort of to intellectualize it, but that would be fun too.
But that's one of the things that draws her to Mulder in general is that, like, that secret freakness that, like, she want like, as much as Mulder is the guy with the poster that says, "I want to believe," I think the person who really wants to believe is Scully, and that's what makes her such a skeptic, is because I think if you put all your eggs in the basket of, "This is a weird phenomenon," or, "This is something that can't be explained," then you're just going to assume that. And Scully wants something to prove her wrong, and that's the interesting thing about her character is Mulder is a bit of the boy who cried wolf. He's constantly everything he sees is an alien or a ghost or a sea monster, and Scully's like, no, no, Jan, like Scooby Doo style, pulling the mask off. But I think secretly in her heart of hearts, and a lot of that does come from Gillian Anderson's, like, pitch perfect performance. And also I think if you play a character that long, enough of yourself seeps into that character. And once again, I haven't seen the later seasons, but I have seen the movies, and I do recognize that the Scully in those is very different than the Scully I encountered, in the first season.
Right. Yes. Uh, I almost said something that would probably be kinda spoilerish, but,
I don't believe in
yeah.
spoilers, so go ahead. Spoil me, baby.
There definitely comes a point in the series where the script is sort of flipped. Mulder's not around, and Scully is the one who is not the skeptic, and her new partner is.
Is that the Robert Patrick era?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. See, I
which
I
I
know
env
stuff.
okay, cool. Um, okay, do you wanna tell us what happens in this episode?
I would love to, and
Okay.
I warned you ahead of time. I tried to keep this brief, but I wrote like 4 paragraphs, baby. I'll try to keep it short. Uh, in this episode of The X-Files entitled Fire, which, by the way, is written by Chris Carter himself, I believe, creator of the show, directed by Larry Shaw. And the plot synopsis of it is after a wealthy Englishman burns to death, agents Mulder and Scully are drawn into a case of several unsolved deaths by fire by Mulder's ex turned Scotland Yard detective, Phoebe Green. Her only evidence being love letters left behind to each of the victims' wives. Our suspect is Cecil Lively, an Irish pyrokinetic who has set his eyes on Sir Malcolm Marsden, currently hiding out on Cape Cod with his family. Cecil integrates himself into Marsden's family, first pretending to be a groundskeeper, then befriending their children and killing their driver. Finally, Scully discovers Cecil's identity, but not before a bad case of jealousy from Green, who is also just playing mind games with Mulder. As Cecil makes his move, having also coated Marston's house with rocket fuel, Scully is saved by Green when she douses Cecil with his own rocket fuel, lighting himself on fire. The Marstons and Green return to England. Scully and Mulder both lick their wounds, both physical and mental, including Mulder having finally faced his crippling fear of fire, and Cecil, under lock and key in a hyperbaric chamber, is healing rapidly from 6-degree burns, alive to flame out another day.
Very good. Okay,
Why, thank you.
I might just have you write the synopsis every time.
I'm really good at shortening things, I guess.
Yeah. Um, Usually I'm like, and then, oh, yeah, and this happens? So, yeah, that's
Well,
good.
and I left out a bunch of stuff. There's the whole scene in the bar. I love that they basically paint Cecil as just a psychotic and also can't help showing off, because here's the thing: if he's as good of a planner as he is, and he is clearly, I mean, he like gets in there, pretends to be a groundskeeper, he poisons their driver. Why does he have these mental impulses to go to a bar and burn a bar down for fun? And it's just because he can. So, but I left that whole part out because even though it's the thing that helps Scully figure out he's the one doing it, it's still one of those things where it's like, is it necessary to the plot? Not really.
Yeah, this dude is really creepy, the
Yeah.
actor.
This is Mark Shepard, and a lot of people know him from Supernatural, but he's literally been around forever. He was on Star Trek. He's like guest starred on every single network show you've ever seen, and he's so good. And I believe he has uh, a famous father. William Morgan Shepard actually is his dad. Yes. Oh yeah. William Morgan Shepard was also a character actor who's been in a bunch of things, including Star Trek as well too, and was in the Transformers movies in Gettysburg. And
Interesting. Yeah, he's very creepy. He does that, like, grin at the beginning when he's setting the dude on fire that's just sets the tone for the show really well, I think. And I don't are you a Twin Peaks fan?
oh, very much a Twin Peaks fan.
So,
Absolutely.
like, the fact that he takes on the persona of someone named Bob, he's
Mhm.
in the jean jacket, he's giving the creepy faces, like, it's very Bob coded. Like,
It really is.
yeah,
His goal seems to be women. Like his driving factor seems to be his lust for, I guess, high class women, but also he does hit on that woman in the bar, played wonderfully. If I give another shout out to another great character actor, Linda Boyd, who's like in the episode very little, but she's another person who's been around the block in terms of acting quite a bit, and I love her like two scenes that she has. But yeah, so he's very lusty, which is very much a characteristic of Bob from Twin Peaks as well
yeah.
too. Uh, yeah.
So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out because as I'm going through this season, obviously, Twin Peaks had to have been some kind of influence because we see stuff in it a lot that's very
I
Twin Peaksy.
I that's an interesting, I guess I hadn't thought about this, so now I'm just sort of talking off cuff. I think until Buffy comes around, Twin Peaks is a major influence on TV. I think Buffy kind of streamlines that out of, which is not, once again, huge Buffy fan, so I'm not complaining, but a lot of things in Buffy are very literal, very like even the central metaphor about high school being hell. And uh, Giles has a line at one point in the show, which is I think the subtext is rapidly becoming text, and that's one of the things that I think Buffy's very good at. And I think prior to that, a lot of people, even though it was canceled, looked to Twin Peaks for television inspiration and what a TV show can be, and how different it can be. And I think a lot of the weirdness of X Files like takes a lot from that and less from the sort of like campy's not the right word, but campiness that Buffy sort of embraces and streamlines it and gets rid of a lot of the what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of the weirdness isn't even the right word, but, like, a lot of the, like, really deep, um, absurdity of Twin Peaks to make it more palatable for a mainstream audience, and I think early X-Files really has like, because there's a lot of stuff that just happens in X-Files, and it never gets explained, and you're as an audience, you're just like, "That's cool, that's a cool thing, great."
Yeah. I think Mark Frost and Lynch just made it okay to be weird on TV,
Yeah,
um, and made people making TV sort of take the risk on weirdos like Chris Carter.
yeah.
Um,
I think that's why that Simpsons joke is so brilliant. The famous X-Files I mean, the famous, Twin Peaks Simpsons joke where it's like the guy from the White Lodge dancing with the white horse underneath the tree, and Homer's like, "I don't know what I'm watching, but it's brilliant." Like, because it's not really a joke at the expense of Twin Peaks. It's a joke about how, like, you it's fucking weird, and also, yeah, it's art.
yeah, totally. Okay, should we get into it?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So I kind of want to flip the script this time, and because there are some themes I wanted to talk about, but like we kind of got to just get to the fire because it's it's all about fire. So there are a few movies where sort of similar things happen, where someone is kind of creating. He doesn't create fire, but he can control fire, I guess. So obviously, Firestarter from 1984, based on the Stephen King. There was a remake in 2022 that was not very good. Um,
I mean, I'll be honest, and like I'm not trying to shit on the original either. I don't think the original is very good either.
I agree. It's not yeah. W
Um, I will say there was a sequel to the original movie that was made by Sci-Fi Channel. It was called Firestarter Rekindled, and it's, like a two-part TV miniseries. Yeah, aired on Sci-Fi Channel in 2002, and I remember it, like, being weird because it felt like it felt as equally indebted to Firestarter as it did to sort of Species in a way that it was, like, going for sexy, because I do think there's a subset of people who think fire is sexy, and, but I've not seen it in a really long time, so I can't really speak on it, but I remember watching it when it came out and being like, "Maybe the source material here just isn't that great."
it's possible.
Not to shit on Stephen King, because the next one we're gonna talk about is brilliant, so
Right. Yeah, Firestarter, it's not great. It's fine. Definitely not one of my favorite King
yeah.
adaptations, and I
Though
haven't read the book.
I do think, Drew Barrymore is very I mean, she always had it, you know? She's very good in the original. She's not in the miniseries sequel.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
I
recast
didn't
her
know
for some reason,
she
making
turned that
Charlie's
down.
Angels or something, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, do you wanna talk about the next obvious pick?
Yeah, the next obvious pick is 1976's Brian De Palma classic Carrie, which is based on another novel by Stephen King. In fact, Stephen King's first novel. Carrie, the novel itself, is really, really brilliant. The movie is kind of a departure of an adaptation. It gets the spirit of the book, I think, pretty well, but it is also doing something a little different, and I really respect that as well because I'm not a one-to-one if you haven't noticed between, like, not believing in spoilers, being able to watch anything when I was a kid, and, not believing that an adaptation has to be one-to-one the source material, I'm probably considered, uh, a unicorn in that sense, but I don't think adaptations need to be exactly like the source material because we already have the source material, and that being said, there is many different branches off of that. There's The Rage, Carrie 2, which comes out in 1999. There's a 2002 Brian Fuller TV movie that comes out, and then there's a remake. Yeah, also, by the way, 2002. Once again, What Was in the Air? Everybody was like, "We got to make a Stephen King girl sets things on fire" property. And then there was the remake in 2013. I love the original Carrie. I don't know when the last time you saw it was, but I truly think it holds up.
The last time I saw it, probably been a few years and enjoy it. I didn't rewatch any of the Carrie movies for this, but, yeah, I remember just sort of liking most of them. I just watched In Search of Darkness about the late '90s, and they talked
Yeah.
about the rage. So,
Yeah, I don't hate I have not seen it since oh god, probably a couple decades, but I remember liking it, but kind of having to associate it in my brain as being its own thing and not necessarily. I mean, even though it has direct ties to Carrie, like, I think that ending sequence has, like, a lot of cool ideas and a lot of unique stuff, but and for those who don't know, Carrie is a book, a movie about a bullied girl who discovers that she has telekinetic and pyrokinetic powers and, uses them ultimately to take revenge on the people who have bullied her and her, religiously oppressant mother and basically a whole town. I mean, the one of the interesting things is no one's really adapted is she destroys the town in the book. She, like, craters the town that she's from, which is a lot. But I remember liking The Rage Carrie 2. I hate the TV movie, which is a real bummer because it was created by Brian Fuller, who eventually went on to do Wonder Falls and Hannibal and Pushing Daisies and things that I like. But I think the TV movie, because the TV movie was also like kind of a backdoor pilot, and so spoiler alert, I guess if you believe in spoilers, she lives. And to me, that's sort of anti to the whole message. It's like she, not that I'm an eye for an eye person, but like she mass murders a lot of people, a lot of innocent people. And it sort of sucks to be like, and then she gets to go on and like,
Right.
and then the remake is just not very good. I wish the remake was good, but you know,
Yeah. Honestly, have them all especially the TV movie and the remake jumbled in my mind. I don't know which is which, but I didn't realize that the TV movie was Brian Fuller, who I also really like, and that's interesting. I might go back and rewatch it.
it's funny because he's a good person to adapt it, and for a long time, I know he's been working on a Christine adaptation, and I'm curious to see what his take on Christine is. But yeah, it's just, it, like, kinda misses the point. And once again, I don't think an adaptation has to be one to one, but I think, like I was saying about the Brian De Palma, like, I think the spirit's there, and I think the spirit is a little missing in the TV movie.
Awesome. Okay. Do you have any others, or could you think of any others where someone is
I I watched one specifically for this because it's a movie that's been a blind spot for me for a very long time, and that is a sort of underseen, 1990 Tobe Hooper film called Spontaneous Combustion, and that is a film about a couple who is tested on by the US government, by, like, basically catching them in a nuclear blast. They have a child who is born with pyrokinetic powers who accidentally burns them to death as a baby, and the government sort of monitors him his whole life, and it flashes forward to, he's in his 30s, he's played by Brad Dourif now, and he's, like, slowly uncovering this conspiracy, that he's been watched his whole life, and it's not great, but it is and much like a lot of Tobe Hooper's films post the '80s, it's really beautiful, it's really well shot. Brad Dourif is giving an amazing performance, but it's the plot really isn't there, and so maybe the best thing in it is, that you get to watch John Landis die a horrible death by fire, and I think that's probably what he deserves, so, but outside of that, it's not really amazing, sadly, other than watching Brad Dourif really fucking lose it.
interesting? I had never heard of that. Okay. I'll have to maybe watch that.
It's like I said, there's some gorgeous scenes, especially towards the end, that are just all lit by, like, really electric blue light, and once again, I can't even see the color blue, but it's really cool to, like, see that on screen, 'cause especially with how flat a lot of movies look nowadays.
Awesome. I also thought maybe we could just go through some horror movies with, like, really iconic fire scenes.
Absolutely.
Um, do you wanna start us off, or I can, whatever?
I'll let you start off actually on this one.
Okay. Well, one I thought of was House of Wax from 2005, which I love and most people don't love. I think in
Famously
horror.
advertised as "See Paris Die," we were a broken society in
Yeah,
2005.
for sure. I think it's gaining more love within the horror community as not just the Paris Hilton horror flick, but anyways, at the end, famously is, like, everything's set on fire, which is a really cool scene, and, like, the wax melting and stuff, so that's one of the first ones I thought of.
It's funny because so I I've seen House of Wax 2005. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I'm a huge Vincent Price fan, and he's in the 1953 original. I think maybe, and I could be completely off base, one of the things that people had a problem with is the original is not really about, um, it's not a slasher in any way, shape, or form, but it is about a crazy guy who kills people and makes them into wax figures, and that's Vincent Price's character. But it also ends with a big fire and whatnot, and so that I think connects it to the remake quite a bit. But I don't remember disliking the remake a ton. I remember it being like campy in a different direction than the original was.
Yeah, for sure.
The Wicker Man, 1973. I mean, that movie ends obviously in a huge fire climax. It's about a detective who's investigating a missing person who goes to a small island in England where everything seems just a little off, and everybody's sort of under the um, tutelage of Christopher Lee, who is a religious leader but also a scholar. And eventually, this policeman finds out that this is something they do, where they trick somebody to come to their island and sacrifice them so they will have a good harvest the next year. And I think the ending of the film is one of the most iconics of him burning alive inside the giant wicker man, screaming at them that this will not help their crops. And the implication is it actually just might. Like,
Yeah, w this isn't one I thought of, and I love this movie. I really love this. There's another movie on here that I really love that I didn't think of at first, so I was disappointed in myself for not thinking of this. Um, but in Halloween Kills in 2021, there's the opening scene is very much like,
yeah.
uh it's the second movie in a trilogy, and the first one, Laurie has trapped Michael Myers in the basement of her house and then set the house on fire to, like, end him once and for all, and in this opening scene, the firefighters show up. There's so many firefighters just, so he
Yeah.
can kill them all.
Haddonfield just lousy with firefighters. You didn't realize it really until
Um, and they realize he's down there and try to set him free, and then he, murders everybody, so but it's a
it's
cool scene.
yeah, it's my favorite thing, and it's unfortunate that in my opinion, the movie never achieves that height again. It's between that and the really cool, very accurate flashbacks to Loomis, the new scenes. Those are the best things in Halloween Kills. I don't really love the rest of the movie around it, but I do quite like uh, all that stuff, especially that opening sequence. And like that opening sequence it's so funny because I feel like the first movie does a lot to dispel the super Michael Myers of the like mid trilogy. And by that I mean 4, 5, and 6, where he like really became like a super ghoul. Uh and I think Halloween Kills kind of is like, actually no, what if he is just like really strong?
Yeah, there's a lot to say about these movies, but this opening
Yeah.
scene is good. It's great.
I need to rewatch the 3rd one because I remember not hating it as much as everybody did. I didn't love it, but I was like, "I think we're being a little harsh here."
Yeah, I rewatched it pretty recently. I like it. It scratches an itch that,
Yeah.
um
David Gordon Green is, I'm gonna say something not very nice, but I will try. David Gordon Green is a filmmaker who I feel like has quit living up to his potential, but I would love to see him try. That's the because I don't think he's a bad filmmaker. I just think he's, for some reason, especially after that Exorcist movie, I'm like, "Oh boy, you go back, do some indies, my friend."
yeah, I didn't see the Exorcist movie. I think I
You
watched
can live without it.
yeah, I have. I watched the, Silent Night, Deadly Night remake, and it's the same lead that's in Halloween
Okay,
Ends, and that's why I wanted to watch it again because he's really great in that role. If
I
you
need
haven't
to
seen the
watch
movie
it.
Silent Night, Deadly Night, it's really great.
No, I haven't gotten around to it yet. I did know it happened, but,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Alright, do you have any others?
Um, I mean, obviously, fire is a huge part of Freddy's lore in the Nightmare on Elm Street films, whether it's the original in which they talk about burning him alive or in the 2010 remake where you actually get to see his death, and that sort of carries over into a lot of the other I mean, even part 6, Freddy's Dead, you see, with the 3 dream demons as he's, like, burning alive, like, come and offer him power, and I think Freddy himself just ends up being represented a lot by fire in those films. There's a lot of people who burn themselves to wake themselves up in the dreams, or even, thinking Freddy versus Jason, obviously, they use the leitmotif of Jason is water and Freddy is fire, and I think I would be remiss if we didn't bring up Freddy as being something that is connected to, this primal fear of getting burned, much like Mulder has in, this X-Files episode. Funny enough, in the behind the scenes, there was a lot of fire effects in this, and using fire is very dangerous, even for stuntmen, even for trained professionals. There was one person who got injured in all of the fire filming, and that was David Duchovny himself, who burned his hand and actually has a scar on the back of his hand from this episode. So,
Interesting.
in his character being afraid of fire, and it's like, well, maybe he had a point.
Right. Yeah, the scene where the hall is just fire is
Yeah.
crazy. I don't know if any of that is CGI or it
I don't think
looks
I mean, it's
very real.
Yeah, it's a lot I think maybe the most visual effect is when Cecil himself is on fire, though you can tell the, like, wide shots where it is a stunt person on fire and he's just going up, but I think, like, Mark Sheppard in the bar when he lights his hand on fire, I think that's mostly a visual effect, but it's especially in the '90s, early '90s, it's really hard to fake fire and make it look real, and, that's one of the things I really respect about this episode is they're doing a pretty dangerous, uh, effects, but, by pulling it off and making it look good.
Yeah, it looks good. Another sort of, I guess we can call it a trope that I thought about is like, because this dude is totally deranged and like just takes glee in
Yeah,
killing people and setting them on fire. Um, so that's sort of one thing I kind of want to look at is just horror movies with killers that are just taking glee in the killing.
yeah, and I like some of the you've, like, listed a couple here that I really like, specifically talking about anything in the Thomas Harris sort of universe of Silence of the Lambs, between Hannibal and Buffalo Bill, Hannibal, the movie 2001, the Red Dragon, or even the original Manhunter, uh, and I think that's one of the interesting things because when you look at those and when you look at this episode, specifically the antagonist, like a huge driving factor for them is ego. I think a key portion that I didn't pick up on when I was first watching this episode was the fact that like the thing that Cecil wants is these high class women that he like leaves love letters behind, but once he murders their husbands, he doesn't care anymore. He just sort of moves on, and so it's not really about these women, it's about the power that he has of, like, ruining their lives, and I think that's a lot of what, I'm Silence of the Lambs, the books and stuff that, they are very much, beach reads, I would say, which is kind of crazy to say because I think nowadays people think, like, beach reads are, like, heated rivalry and whatnot, but there was a time in the, like, '80s and '90s where I have visceral memories of my parents used to have, a headboard on the back of their bed, which had bookshelves, and my mom had all these books that had all these, like, really deranged covers of, like, the one I always think about is Flowers in the Attic, which is a book about, children who are put in the attic by their mother because she wants to remarry and doesn't want people to know that she has children, and it leads to, like, poisoning and incest, and it's kinda crazy. And I remember the cover of this book being, like, the house and the window, and it's just the girl's face in the window, and you could open it up, and it was just, like, an image of the girl trapped in the attic. And I think books at the time were, like, really interested and we as a society, we've sort of replaced that with true crime podcasts, which I are the bane of my existence because I think that the reason true crime I think loving the people who love true crime don't what's the right way to put this? It's actually my problem with David Gordon Green's first Halloween, which is I think the people who listen to true crime want to understand and empathize with the killers, and I think that that is a broken place to be. I think the real subject of true crime, if you're interested, should be the victims and how horrible incidents like this, because and maybe this is where my separation between fiction and reality comes in, because I can watch a horror movie and delight in what's happening is really fucked upness, but in the real world, like, there's consequences. There's, uh, victims' lives are ruined because of, whether it's the people that are left behind, whether it's them surviving, and so I think true crime is like a kind of a bane when people delve into it because they're not interested in, the after effects. They're more interested in the psychological nature of the person committing the crimes. I know that's a huge tangent, but that's the way I've been feeling for like the last decade, uh, which if you love true crime, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make you out to be a bad person. I just think please think about the victims. And that's when I saw the first Halloween, the David Gordon Green Halloween, I was really excited that they were these true crime podcasters, and we were really going to delve into like what it's like to survive an event, and then in the end they like, cuz there's that great moment where the podcasters are like, you know, oh, we need to understand, and and Laurie Strode's like, uh this man murders, like 7 teenagers, and we need to understand why. I get divorced twice and I'm a mess. And like, yeah, I think that's people when it comes to an act so unconscionable, people really want to understand why. And I think that's maybe a dead end sometimes. That being said, I do think that in the 80s and 90s, there was a huge resurgence of people wanting to do that and they're reading these thrillers and understanding. And I think there was a lot of forensic psychology like that was being seeped into uh our fiction. I mean, I even remember growing up watching a show called Profiler about a woman who like profiled serial killers. I mean, on the show it was borderline like she's also psychic, which I always thought was like, oh, that's not what profiling is. But and so I think, like, yeah, when now that I've just gone on for, like, 5 minutes about this, going back to Silence of the Lambs and whatnot, I think there was a lot of interest in understanding the psychology of somebody who really gets off on other people's pain and fear, and that's really what the Cecil character is, like, the Hannibal, um is like the gentlemanly killer. Like, he doesn't kill anybody who he doesn't think deserves it, but what right does he have to decide who deserves it? And so that's what makes him not that far off from a Buffalo Bill or a Cecil who's made up in their mind a reason to murder people, and therefore I mean, I think that even goes back to my Carrie thing of why the TV movie doesn't work, because what right does she have? I understand the bullying is horrific, but what right does she have to then take the lives of the people that bullied her, and then also the other people who just got in the way? And Cecil very much, I mean, that scene where he goes to the bar and he burns the bar down, he's just there to delight in the fear and terror that he's causing. And if somebody gets caught in the crossfire, that's no big deal because for him, it's what gets his jollies off. And so I do think you see that in Silence of the Lambs. I think that's why the Hannibal TV show is so brilliant in analyzing that, because you do end up falling in love with Hannibal, but you don't ever really like, it's not really about like, oh, feel bad for him. He's not a likable character. And the show isn't interested in presenting you a version of Hannibal that makes you go like, oh, he had some bad stuff happen to him, so it's okay that he eats brains.
Right. Yeah. It's more about, like, if Will can love him, so can I.
Right, exactly, exactly, and Will's damaged on his own.
Yeah, I feel like all of his Harris's characters sort of just delight in the kill in pretty deranged ways. You mentioned Freddy and Nightmare on Elm Street series sort of goes along with everything I feel like we're gonna talk about, because he's making the quips, he just really
Yeah.
enjoys killing teenagers.
And the difference between him and, like, Hannibal is that Freddy's such a little bitch. Like, Freddy's like, "Oh, yeah, I killed you." Like
Yeah.
like, so, like, yeah, but he delights in it, that's and specifically, like, his mental illness is even more, It's one of the things that people don't like to talk about, but he gets off on making sure it's kids, and so, like, it's a little extra fucked up.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I guess most of these are kind of slasher characters, but Chucky in the Child's Play series, he also just really enjoys or
Yeah.
seems to really enjoy killing people.
And it's so funny because the groundwork is there in the first one. I mean, it's easy to forget that, like, he's a possessed doll. That's not the hard part to forget, but it's easy to forget that he's possessed by a serial killer, by somebody who started off delighting in killing people. And, but I do like, it's so funny as the series goes on in the series of films and then also the TV show, like, that he just gets more and more. And part of that is, I think, in his, like, not to armchair psychoanalyze him, but, like, he's immortal. Like, at that point, by the time you get to the TV series, he's like, "Listen, how many times have I died and I've come back?" And so death is just not even on his radar in terms of, like, he's like, and as it turns out, everybody he kills stays dead, except for Tiffany. But like, other than, like, and so he's just kind of like, I am God at this point. Yeah. So he's an interesting character. I would love to talk about Chucky, ad nauseum, honestly,
Yeah.
because I do really. It's such a weird. It's a series that shouldn't have worked as well and as long as it does, and I really liked the show too, and I love that the show was just like, we're gonna be crazy and campy and gay, and yeah, and more power to it.
Yeah. I never finished the show. I need to go back and watch it. But like
You
thinking
should.
about
It gets really wild, but, like, honestly, I never fell off of it. I never was like, "This is too much." Like, I think it justifies its weirdness.
nice. Yeah, I need to rewatch it. But yeah, like Bride of Chucky, they're kind of gleefully trying to one up each other. So it's a good one.
Bride of
Um,
Chucky is such a, not to get off onto the Chucky series, but it's such a smart right-hand turn for that series because the 3rd one is so self-serious, and, like, listen, when I remember seeing the 3rd one and being really freaked out by the scene at the military school where he replaces the bullets in the there's a scene in the 3rd movie where they're doing war games at a military school, and Chucky has replaced the blanks and the guns with real bullets, and I remember that really scaring me for some reason as a kid, but seeing Bride of Chucky when I was in college, going with a friend that, like, literally I'd never hung out with before too. It was just somebody else I knew who liked horror movies. I was like, "Do you wanna go see Bride of Chucky?" Was such a delightful time because it is a movie that was like, its tongue was so firmly in its cheek.
mhm. Another thing I want to talk about, and I think we sort of touched on this a little bit, is this episode really feels like a detective movie. And that's kind of what it is. And it's funny because Phoebe comes over and she is bringing this case to Mulder and Scully, and Mulder and Phoebe both sort of consider themselves the Sherlocks,
Yeah.
which would make Scully the Watson, but she figures everything out. Scully,
Yes.
you know,
No, she
uh,
does, but that's because, not to, like, but that's because they're too busy distracting each other. And not
right,
not to downplay. I mean, Scully oftentimes is the genius, so I don't want to take away from her because I think she's a really brilliant character. But, like, she's doing the detective work because Mulder and Phoebe are, like, too busy fucking kissing and slapping each other,
right,
and that's, somebody has to pay attention to the plot at hand. And so you're right, like, she's the Watson who discovers it, but, like, that's because she's the only one who's like, they're both fancying themselves the Sherlock and not doing any of the work. And
right.
also, one of the big problems with most Sherlock stories is just that Sherlock just happens to know something that nobody else does, which is bad detective work, honestly. And not enough people talk about that, honestly. Sherlock Holmes isn't the world's greatest detective. He's just a fucking know-it-all.
So yeah, Scully, she just kind of rolls her eyes at them and then like behind the scenes figures everything out. So I just kind of wanted to talk about some horror movies maybe that are more detective stories, or I wanted to find some where the thing was like, how is this happening? Because that's sort of the whole plot of the or mystery of the show is like they don't know how these fires are happening. They don't know what's causing them. They don't know. So they're just like we have these inexplicable fires and we're trying to figure out what's going on. And there just doesn't seem to be a lot of horror movies that do that unless you found some too. Um, but one that I did think of was April Fool's Day, from 1986, which is a sort of kind of a whodunit. In this movie, a group of friends are going away, and it's April Fools, I guess, and they start dying one by one. There's a big plot twist at the end that I'm not gonna. I know you don't believe in spoilers, but
But I once again unicorn. So
yeah, so this is a really fun one, and the kids are kind of trying to figure out what's happening. The main girl mostly is like, how why are these people dying? This is crazy.
yes, I really like that movie, honestly, and I remember it pissing a lot of people off or finding out that it pissed a lot of people off because of the way it ends. But yeah, it's a fun one.
The remake is really bad. Do not watch the remake.
I
Um,
didn't even
don't
go for it. No.
don't do it.
One of the ones that I thought of that, I don't know if you've seen, but The Empty Man from 2020, and I have not seen it since 2020, but The Empty Man follows like a it's kinda strictly about a guy trying to figure out, like, what is happening and why it's happening, and I don't wanna like, that whole thing, like, I feel like any bit of plot you give to people, and I don't wanna be accused of giving out spoilers, and I feel like any bit of plot you give away from that movie kind of feels like a spoiler, but it's a really cool and unfortunately, like, I think 2 things really hindered it is it came out in 2020, during the pandemic, and so I think a lot of people saw it at home instead of in a theater, which I think it would have played really well in a theater, and also it's long, and it's long in a way that you don't always want a horror movie to be, which is not saying that, like, I like my comedies to be 90 minutes and under. I don't think every horror movie has to be 90 minutes and under, but this one, you feel a little bit of the weight of it, like, especially because it is so much following a guy trying to figure out what's going on, investigating, and you want the satisfaction of him figuring it out, and having that delayed is tough for an audience, I think. But yeah, the Empty Man is a really cool movie if you've not seen it.
I haven't seen it. I think it's been on my list for a while, so maybe I'll bump it up and watch it.
You really should. I think you'll especially enjoy it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks. Long Legs from 2024 is, a detective story very
Yeah.
much in the vein of like Silence of the Lambs or something.
Well, that was my one problem with the advertising of Long Legs because they leaned so heavily in advertising it like it was Silence of the Lambs, and to me, it only is in terms of, like, dressing. I mean, literally in the first scene, and this isn't really a spoiler because it's the first scene, Micah Monroe's like, "I'm psychic." It's like, "Wait, what?" So, yeah, that was my because I ended up really like I know a lot of people, feel some sort of way about Long Legs. I liked it a lot. I had a lot of fun with it, but I think part of it is the campy nature. I think a lot of people also, and this goes to Silence of the Lambs as well too. Like there's some uncomfortable themes if specifically Silence of the Lambs when you're talking about like trans representation and whatnot. And I I can't begrudge anybody feeling that sort of way about. I did not take Nicolas Cage's character to have, like, trans leanings, but I'm also not trans, and so it's not really my place to speak on it. So I get, like, if you have issues with it there, like, 100%. Totally get it.
Yeah, I didn't take that away either, and
I didn't either,
it
and I think
never
it's
would have.
because I think maybe, like, not to we're around the same age, so we, like, grew up in the era of, like, the ending of glam rock and whatnot, and that sort of playfulness, and that's what I took his character as being, like, his room is filled with T-Rex posters,
Right,
and so, like, he's just very, like, that sort of, you know, bygone era of glam rock, and, that's what I took it as, but I totally understand, if I could be very wrong.
right. Yeah, no, I just was like, he's a weird dude
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
who's,
Yeah, I
like,
didn't
too
I
into
didn't
T-Rex.
I didn't assume any sort of gender thoughtness from him in terms of,
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe I'll need to rewatch it and see with that kind of in mind maybe. We also talked about The Wicker Man again, which is just a detective story.
Yeah,
Um,
and that one's fun because he's not good, you know? He's like but what they're getting at with that specifically is, like, he would've maybe figured it out if he had chosen to believe, just ever so briefly. And that's, that's his major flaw in The Wicker Man is that he just truly never believes that anything, that's going on could be outside of his, like, understanding of what reality is. All the clues are basically right there, and he just, he walks to his own death.
I thought of In the Mouth of Madness just because it's also a detective story. You're listening to this show and you are a fan of X-Files and a fan of horror movies and have not seen In the Mouth of Madness, I feel like you should put it at the top of your list. It's basically this guy who is hired to, find this missing author, and the author's stories are sort of coming to life around him. It's very surreal in a lot of ways, but it's like I guess it's hard. It's kind of a detective story, but it's Sam Neill. It's really great.
Yeah, it's the capper of the unofficial John Carpenter Apocalypse trilogy, which sort of started with The Thing, continues on through Prince of Darkness, and sort of ends in The Mouth of Madness, which is not to say that any of these movies are connected in any way, shape, or form, but they are just about, like, kind of the end of the world in their own ways, and, I love all 3 of these movies, but this one specifically has that element of I mean, I guess you could say The Thing is also, like, borderline detective because it's people really trying to figure out who's what and what's who, and, but this, like, really follows a lot of those classic tropes as well as, like, really moving into Lovecraftian territory and being successful at it, which a lot of films are not super successful in adapting his work or making work feel like Lovecraft, but this movie does a really great job of it, and Sam Neill gives an amazing performance, truly.
Yeah, this is a yeah, it's a great movie. And one I wanted to mention that I might have mentioned before on the show is Strange Harvest from 2024. This is might not be up your alley because it's a found footage movie that's made as a true crime sort of documentary. So
I'm not against all true crime. I'll temper my expectations.
it just yeah, it follows all the beats of a true crime story. So it's like if you didn't know it and you just put it on, you would think you were watching just any other true crime show because it's similar to those in so many ways. But there are supernatural elements towards the end where you'll be like, "Wait, what?"
But I love when somebody plays with a genre and doesn't, that's the, um, like, a really underseen film that I think was really, not just good, but also prescient was, Series 7, The Contenders, which I don't know if you've ever seen. It's from the, like, early 2000s, and it's a movie done as though it's a marathon of 4 episodes of a reality show, that has been running for 7 seasons where everybody has to kill each other. And it's really cool and really brilliant, and, I love that movie, and it's one of those that, like, I feel like nobody ever really talks and every now and then has a resurgence, and somebody will be like, "Has anybody else seen this movie?" And it was made, like, right on the cusp of us having all of these like, I think the biggest reality show at the time was probably, like, American Idol, and so it, like, wasn't it's so, like we didn't have Love Island back then is what I'm saying, like, but it feels like Love Island if everybody had a gun. And, and so,
Nice.
yeah, it's really cool, and but it's done very much like if you watch it, you feel like you're just watching, like, 4 separate episodes of a TV show in the, 4 of this crazy show in which people target each other.
Say the title again?
Series 7, The Contenders?
I asked you to say it again because it's not one that I'm just gonna remember.
Yeah, yeah, no, and you should definitely check it. I think you would think it's really cool. It's funny, every time I say Series 7, The Contenders, my phone thinks I'm saying Siri. So,
Awesome. So it's gonna, like, download that movie for you.
yeah, it's it's like, "Oh, okay. You're hunting people, great."
Yeah, I'll have to check that out, that sounds great. But, yeah, Strange Harvest, I was delightfully surprised by it. I was just, like, in the mood for a bad found footage movie and put it on and was like, "Oh, this is actually good."
I love a surprise like that,
Yeah.
truly.
Any other detective type movies that you wanted to mention?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, and it's funny because I did, like, think about this prior to it, and I couldn't, it's not a well, I think, that is like people often go to because we as a society kind of like to put things in boxes. And I think anytime you enter too far into I mean, you could argue like Seven is a horror movie, but Seven's also like a thriller, and and I think that's what, once you put a detective into the situation, I think people are like, well, that's a thriller. And so, Zodiac is another, like, real has some really, really scary, um, truly scary moments, and but is, I think, thought about as being along the lines of more thriller than horror. It's funny that I went to 2 different Fincher movies, but he's really good at, kind of doing that tightrope walk of the line, getting, I hate the term elevated horror, and when people talk about elevated horror, I think it's very stupid because I think there's people that have been doing that sort of, it's just, people think horror is so easy, and I don't think it is that easy to scare people, but I think Fincher's really good at, like, confusing the audience and making them think that they're watching something that, is, like, really high class, and it's just another horror movie.
Yeah. Yeah, as a '90s kid, it's really easy to, like, the path to be like the because I was thinking, like, Seven, Zodiac, and then it's like Kiss the Girls, all those he's was really big on those kind of detective serial killer movies.
Underrated, one of my go-tos, one of my favorites, Copycat with Sigourney Weaver and
Yeah.
Holly Hunter. I fucking love Copycat. We did a Holly Hunter, well, we've done a Sigourney Weaver episode and a Holly Hunter episode on the mixed reviews, but we talked about in the Holly Hunter episode that, like, it's no, um, surprise that Holly Hunter's cast as a sparky upstart Southern FBI agent, just a couple years after Silence of the Lambs. You think that
Mhm.
you think those people didn't know
Yeah.
where they're gonna make their money?
Yeah, Copycat is good. But, yeah, if you wanna if you like the detective aspect of this episode, then just look at '90s serial
Yeah,
killer lists on Letterboxd, and you'll find a lot of great stuff.
very true, very true.
Okay, I also just like to ask if there are any movies that you thought of based on styles, vibes, or anything. I didn't really think of any, but
I don't know, we've covered a lot of ground, honestly, and that was it's funny that like I said, the first thing that came in my mind when you gave me sort of a list of episodes I could pick from, and I chose this, was Spontaneous Combustion just because I hadn't seen it, and I was like, "Oh, I should watch that." But yeah, I don't know, I think we've covered sort of the gamut.
yes, awesome. Okay, well, thank you again for joining me. This was a lot of fun. Do you wanna tell us where we can find you online and stuff?
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. I know I'm a talker, so it's sort of why I got into podcasting, so hopefully I did not, monologue too much, on your show, but you can find me if you wanna hear my other monologues, you can find me, on 2 different Glitterjaw podcasts. I love being part of Glitterjaw, and, that's The Mixed Reviews. We're a film podcast where we take a film subject such as an actor, director, or mini genre. We take an entire month, learn as much as we can, watch as many movies as we can, and we give it back to you. Plus, we tell you what we like and what we don't like. And I do that with my good friend Louis Rondon. It's a monthly podcast. And then my other podcast, The Q Division, is a James Bond rewatch podcast that I do with my good friend Chels Eichholtz. And she has never seen the James Bond movies, so she's getting an education in this. I grew up loving the James Bond movies, but I've always wondered what made me love them when there's so much about them I don't like. It's such as the sexism, the homophobia, the imperialism, and I think it's a really interesting place to talk about both the queer themes and the, why they're so exciting and what draws people in. So, like you said, you're not a big James Bond person, but you should give the show a shot. I think you would enjoy that. And I guess if you want to find me by myself, you can find me on Blue Sky at it's Gavin. That's SHHITSGAVIN, or you can find me on Instagram at Gavin Mev. That's GAVINMEV. But thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ben. I like your show a lot. This is fun, and I think the concept of this show is really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. I love your show a lot too, and we'll definitely
We're
give
just gonna
people
tell each other how much we love
I
our
know.
stuff.
Let's just do
Like,
that for 40 minutes. Yes, thank you for being here. You'll have to come back. This has been Little Dead Aliens. You can find me at Instagram or Blue Sky at Little Dead Aliens. We are both part of the Glitterjaw Collective. If you're listening to this in May of 2026, we're currently doing a listener, what is it? Survey.
Survey.
A listener survey. My brain just, and so you can go and take that, and we would love your feedback. If you're listening to this any other time, uh, don't click the link because it probably doesn't exist anymore. Um,
It will lead you nowhere.
yeah, sorry. All right. Well, thank you so much again, and everyone have a good day. Don't play with fire.